Before we start bringing the heat, we want the audience to know our thoughts and prayers go out to all those affected by Hurricane Helene. Please consider donating to Operation Airdrop as they collect and fly out supplies to those affected. A list of needs, a link to donate, and even volunteer opportunities can be found at operation-airdrop.com. Once again, that's operation-airdrop.com. Once again, operation-airdrop.com as a Frontstretch family comes together to replace the horror of Helene with hope.
It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another edition of Bringing the Heat. Got a jam-packed show, so we're going to dive right into our interview, this time with Parker Kligerman, driver of the number 48 car. He spoke with our Steven Stumpf last week, so let's play that interview right now.
Now it's time for...
One more time, can he get to the bumper? No, it's Parker Kligerman winning in Mid-Ohio.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Steven Stumpf and Frontstretch here with Parker Kligerman here at Kansas Speedway, heading into his final playoff opener and final full-time season with Big Machine Racing. Parker, talk about the decision that you made to retire, or just retire from full-time driving. What was the reason? Why did you feel like it was time?
I don't know if there's any one specific thing. I think with decisions like this, it's a multitude of different things, right, that add up, and then you say, hey, I think I'm good. And it really came down to that. I don't know if there's any other way to describe it. I feel very at peace with it. I've never been so relaxed in my entire life as I have the last 2 weeks. So relaxed. I've slept a ton, and I was like, was something wrong? But no, I think it's, this is all I've ever chased for over a decade and a half, or 22 years, basically, since I first stepped in a go-kart. I wanted to do this. And I know in 6 weeks, or 7 with this week, I'm shutting that off for the first time in my life. But I'm at peace with it. I think this was a really cool opportunity. Thank you to Scott and Sandy Borchetta for the opportunity, and Spike Coolers and everyone who made it happen, because it let me come to peace with this that I wouldn't have been ready to do 2-3 years ago, right? So in the end, it's been, made the decision, took the leap. We'll see what's on the other side.
You talk about being at peace, content now. Kind of describe just how your mindset has changed just from starting your career full-time in ARCA to the part-time years to now. Just kind of how have you changed as a driver but also a person?
Yeah, I mean, person. I did a lot of growing up in front of the public eye and in front of race teams and that sort of thing, and I can think to, my time at Penske. I say I didn't go to college, but I went to the Penske College because that's basically the age I was when I was there. And you do a lot of growing up in that time period, right? And, how fortunate was I to be exposed to people like Roger Penske, but also, make mistakes in front of a really important, great organization was not the right place, right thing to do, but you grow up, you learn from that. And in my part-time days, I always was trying to get back to this. So, that's why I made sure to say pursuing full-time, because even when I wasn't, my mind was thinking, how do I get there? Like, how do we make it happen? You're always working and trying to sell sponsorship and do all these behind-the-scenes things and networking and meeting teams and jumping to ride and, sacrificing every personal life thing to just make this happen. And so I don't regret it at all. I think it's been an amazing journey. I have, absolutely loved this game. I love this game more than anything in the world. But I'm ready to, see what's next in life, and I've played it for a long time. I've been very lucky to do that.
I know you have one. I feel like you probably answered this, but I know you've been wanting to win an Xfinity race for a while. Will you be at peace with whatever happens in these last 7 races, or will there just be that part that'll just sting? Man, I wish we could have got one.
I'd love to. I think, I'm not putting any extra pressure to make it happen. We've been so damn close. If we just keep doing what we've been doing, I think the opportunity is there to make it happen. I think it could happen today. Honestly, we have a car, in my opinion, that's top 5 car that we can go win this race. So it's, I want to make it happen, but I'm not putting that pressure on myself. And I feel the same way about the Championship 4. I want to get to the Championship 4. I want to do that. That's an amazing accomplishment to me for this race team. And if we can make that happen, I would be over the moon. If we don't, just having a successful 7 races, similar to what we've done all year, would make me just as happy.
With kind of the pressure off, do you kind of feel like just preparing for the playoffs, preparing for this week, is there like a more of a sense of calmness, heading into this?
I don't want to say calmer, but definitely, at least for me, yeah. I'm a very high-strung person. I operate at a very high heart rate and everything, and I will tell you, I've been the most relaxed I've ever been in my life. So that's wild, but still put in the same amount of effort and work, right? Even more than a year prior, because I now know what to expect. I know how to allocate my time better, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm going after this as if it was the first one ever, because I want to go win this championship and make the championship 4, and we have that opportunity here at Big Machine Racing. So that would be spectacular. But I think it goes back to your original questions about being calm. Just really at peace. I'm really, really at peace with the decision and with my career as a whole and what I've done in the sport and the opportunities I've had. And I'm very thankful to have this chance to end it right at the precipice of our series here and at the pointy end, trying to race for a championship. That's just such a cool thing. I just want to go get it done.
What will you miss? What will you miss the most of running full time each year? What were the things you'll definitely miss? Yeah,
I think it's the groove of doing this week to week, and you show up and it compounds when you're doing well, and working with all these guys on this team. In terms of just having that camaraderie and working towards a specific goal and knowing that everyone's putting everything they have into it, and you start to see you put in effort and you start to see results so quickly, right? It's every weekend you're mark to market essentially, they say in the investment world, and we have that. We get that often, so you get to see how things are working so quickly, and I love that. But and I just at the end of the day, I love driving race cars, and so there's nothing cooler than doing a qualifying lap up next to the wall like we did earlier today, and watching that all go down, and then having to just decide to do a qualifying lap and something we haven't done here yet. I hadn't run a lap like that ever here, so that's really cool. I'll miss that for sure. And I think the other part is when you're younger, you're always moving up the ladder, right? You're going up, and it's always what's next. And for the first time, my life, I can think for racing wise, it's not what's next. So that's a bit of a transition, and I do miss that. Always going to the next thing and moving up, but hopefully there'll be that opportunity in the next chapter of my life and whatever we go into. But I think just working with the guys and just being a part of a team that's trying to go after trophies and do big things is such a cool feeling.
On the other hand, what will you not miss?
Well, I don't know how much I'll be on the schedule, but the schedule is on the flip side. The schedule is pretty brutal. So that plus. I've really been having to balance my time between Charlotte and Connecticut for the last 5-6 years, actually 7 or 8 years. Because I went back and started more of a life up there, and my girlfriend's up there and everything, and so it was never had the stability down here we're in Kansas right now, but in Charlotte or with the opportunities ride-wise to make that full move and to commit that level, and so that the back and forth between Charlotte, sometimes day trips, sometimes 3-5 times a week. I mean, I've done it all. That part, I let's put it this way. I know specific flight attendants on American Airlines flights between Charlotte and New York. So I've spent a lot of time in those flights. I still will, I'm sure, in my next life. But that part is that's pretty brutal. And then the only other thing I'd say is man, you always going to have this in life no matter what you do. But the idea of just the amount of mind share this takes from sun up to sundown in terms of chasing sponsorship dollars and putting these operations together and trying to build on those. It's such a massive endeavor, and that's the part that why I felt like I had to make a decision at some point. Was you got to turn that off at some point and maybe apply it somewhere else. But it's such an undertaking that people don't see. It's the 99% of the stuff they don't see that's such a large undertaking that if you're not ready to commit that level, then you shouldn't be here. And I think I'm finally good with not being at that level.
Up next year is the brand new TV deals for all 3 series. You've done a bunch of pit reporting in the past. Is there any new news you have to share in terms of what you'll be doing on that side next year?
I don't know. Nothing yet. So stay tuned.
And I talked to you at Darlington about the excitement of Lamb Rock Park being on the schedule as co-owner. When I asked you if you were going to try and run that next year, you said we'll see, not sure, but you'll now have the schedule to do so. So is that basically just a 100% priority next year?
Oh yeah, I got to be in that race. I'll be there no matter what. I don't care what I'm doing. I'm going to be there. The Lamb Rock leadership team has been so great, or so gracious in commending me on making it happen, that sort of thing, which I've been very flattered. But I do feel responsible a little bit for that race. I think I'll continue to be more intertwined. But, yeah, I want to race in. I've got a lot of great people reaching out, wanting to make it happen. So I feel pretty confident that will happen. And, yeah, I think, there's just this place near and dear to my heart. I got to be there. I got to see this. I think it's going to be the biggest event in Lime Rock history. So it's so cool to see this happening and to get a top 3 NASCAR race there.
Getting into the ownership there, did all this kind of come about just with how many trips you did between North Carolina and Connecticut all those years?
What do you mean?
Just with how how much you were going back home, back to Connecticut. Did that kind of at least give you a bigger standing with that track?
No. I think it's just really that was the place. I was pretty entwined to that place early on, in terms of just that's where I first saw racing in person. First place I drove a race car. First race I ever won in a race car, which was my first race. Just put that out there. But, yeah, and I've gone up there a million times afterwards doing automotive stuff with Jalopnik and the Autopian and my YouTube, and I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff up there on my YouTube. So I love that place. It's so beautiful. It's got to be one of the most top 3 beautiful tracks in the world, possibly. And whenever people come up there, it's like a beautiful park that happens to be a racetrack. And so it's just been near and dear to me. And then really the way the connection happened was it was a loose family friend of my dad's who was running the group that took it over. And he just reached out and said, "Hey, would Parker be interested?" He's there's not many of us from Connecticut in the top level of American motorsports, and so I was very flattered and jumped to the opportunity, and I feel very grateful to be a part of it, and I feel really flattered that I've been able to be just a small piece of making something big happen there.
Hoping to be involved in that race in some capacity next year, but since you only closed the door on full-time racing, not part-time, how much or how little of part-time racing do you hope to have next year?
It's a good question. I really don't know. I don't think a large amount. I think if I was above 10 races, that'd be aggressive. But somewhere underneath there is probably the right amount for me. And between trucks and then there's an opportunity to do some Rolex stuff, which would be cool. If we can make that happen, I've always wanted to do sports cars, especially the endurance races. So if that can happen, that'd be cool. And that's my thing, is to also just go experience motorsports the world over. I've been able to sort of experience it from afar, but I want to go. This is such a diverse sport. It comes in so many shapes, forms, sizes, styles, smells, sounds, that it's just in every culture it's different, and I want to go explore that and experience those things. And I love motorsports to the day I die. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's my passion. I've been lucky enough to make it a career, and I don't plan on changing that. I will be as entwined in motorsports for as long as the sport will have me.
For Big Machine next year, Nick Sanchez will be taking over this car full time. Did you have any role or decision in picking him to drive next year?
No, but I think obviously he has history here. He did a great job at the end of 2022. He's doing a great job in the trucks. I think it's a really has already a relationship with all these guys. So I think it's a great fit for them, and it's a big opportunity for him. And hopefully he can take it to the next level. I told him he can have the keys in 7 weeks, but I'll try to keep the cars as clean as possible until then. Hopefully they're covered in confetti after Phoenix, and we've got a championship trophy. But I think we've done over since he's last been here. This whole race team just in so many facets has improved, from processes to just how we operate as a race team and decision making, the things we've learned. So I think he's walking into a really great situation that hopefully, as I said, he can take it to the next level. And nothing would make me happier than seeing them win races and become the full fruition of what we tried to do here at Big Machine Racing.
And looking ahead to the race later today and the rest of the first round, you've been great at super speedways, you've been great at road courses, but that said, they can also be the wild card. So how kind of chaotic do you foresee this first round, and to that extent, how important is getting off on the right footing here?
Hopefully it's chaos for everyone else. We'll take a real smooth round. That'd be fine. I think even being 12 points out to start, we're still in a really good position because that's just a stage, right? And if we just do what we've done for the better part of the last 6 months in terms of average finish, we're top 5 in average finish, a little more stage points, I see no reason we can't advance on points. But Talladega is obviously an opportunity to win. I think today's an opportunity to win. Roval's an opportunity to win. We'll balance that, but we got to be smart. And like my qualifying lap today, we qualified 8th. Was there more to be had in 1 and 2 if I was more aggressive, getting back to the throttle, that sort of thing? Yes, but when you're in this position, we just got to be. And Patrick said it multiple times. We just got to do what we do. and that's be smart and race our race, let the others make the mistakes. And if we do that for the next 3 races, not only do I think there's a trophy out there for us, but 2, I think we easily, move on to the next round. And then all bets are off in round 8 because you got to win 1, you're in the championship 4. So let's go make it happen.
For the last couple of dozen races, is there kind of some bittersweetness knowing that these could potentially be your last trips to these tracks?
Little bit. I mean, I try not to think about it. So, it seeps in at moments, like when the national anthem's happening, it definitely seeps in. I might have teared up a little bit at Watkins Glen, but I'd say I can't let that in too much because it's like I got to focus and give us, the best opportunity to go out there and perform. And I feel like we're doing that, and, we've had some of our best performances just in the last couple months. And so, it's definitely there, but I tell you, everyone, I'm sure it's starting to feel more real, but it won't until the checkered flag falls at Phoenix, and suddenly I'm like, oh, wait, that's it. And we'll see. It might hit me when I least expect it, but I try to just focus right now, and it's only natural and human to think like, oh, yeah, this is the last time we might be here or there or whatever, but it's I've been going to these things for, over 15 years or almost 16 years to all these tracks and doing this, and my first Xfinity start was here in 2009, won the pole that day. And it's wild to think it's flown by so quickly, but here we are.
That was all the questions I had. Is there anything else you'd like to add for all the fans that will be watching this video at home?
Yeah, just, thank you so much. I said it in my, announcement there that, I'm so grateful and appreciative to all the fans that have made this possible because, when you get into this sort of thing, you're not sure how you'll be received, but you want to do the best you can and try to be a good person. And I've tried to do that and give every single person that's ever asked for an autograph or the time of day. And I'll continue to do that, obviously. But, thank you to them because they're the only reason any of this exists in the first place. And I love this game. I love all of it. I love every part of it. And, I hope to hopefully be, as I said, involved and still, seeing a lot of those fans here in the future.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today.
Once again, that was the driver of the Big Machine Racing's Chevrolet in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, that being Parker Kligerman. Let's dive on in now into our news and notes segment of the week with What is Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Alrighty, our What is Still Hot segment. Going to bring in the boss man for his first appearance on the podcast this weekend. We need an expert in the field. I know he doesn't have a law degree, but Tom Bowles at NASCAR Bowles on the Twitter joins the program. Tom, I don't think we have anything to discuss this evening, do we?
Nah, there's nothing really going on.
Exactly. Let's just dive right into it. 2311 Front Row Motorsports. They're suing NASCAR. They filed an antitrust lawsuit in the Western District of New York on Wednesday, October the 2nd. Co-owner Denny Hamlin obviously has been one of the most vocal critics. And I think I just want to get your initial thought, Tom, when you heard this, because we knew it was going to happen, but there's some things that we could be like, oh, maybe they'll settle before due to what could come out. It does not look like anyone is going to settle anytime soon. What was your initial reaction to the news that you saw this morning?
Well, it's weird because in one sense, I wasn't surprised, right? Just like you weren't surprised, just like all of our top reporters weren't surprised. Everybody in the industry knew that this was coming. We had heard that this was coming for a couple of weeks now, but NASCAR, think about any fairy tale, the comparison that you want, the big bad wolf, Goliath. It was a bully, as Michael Jordan stated in his lawsuit. This was an organization that really doesn't get challenged that often. So for 2311 to actually do it, to actually file that lawsuit was a big thing. And it's one thing to talk about it. I think there was still an undercurrent, even though we were hearing the lawsuit that was going to happen. People thought, you know what? All other 30 cars are chartered. They're going to end up negotiating with NASCAR under the table or in a back room, and the deal is going to get done. Or NASCAR will just say, you don't have charters to start the season, and their options are limited because so many other teams didn't sign on to this lawsuit. But 2311 pushed through exactly as we heard. And now we are in unprecedented territory the entire time that I've both covered NASCAR and been a fan of NASCAR over the past 30 something years.
During the lawsuit that came out today, there was some news that we were not privy to. Among the things that were revealed were it costs $18 million to run on a single one charter, one race team in the NASCAR Cup Series for the entire year. Among other things, you had that NASCAR was telling teams that they were preventing teams from participating in any other stock car races while also retaining ownership over the next gen parts and cars. They were only allowed 7 cars, and they were only allowed to change chassis if NASCAR let them. They imposed exclusivity deals on NASCAR sanctioned racetracks. It's very interesting to read some of the things that were revealed in here. Now, obviously, they retained Winston and Strawn LLP as legal counsel, led by Jeffrey Kessler. Now, I was listening to an emergency podcast on the Teardown with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi. This is not just some pro bono guy, Tom. Jeffrey Kessler was the guy that was legal counsel for Tom Brady during Deflategate. He led the NBA free agency. He did a plethora, the NIL deals for college athletics. This guy is the top of the top, and I'm pretty sure that came from the top with Michael Jordan. Anything surprise you about what you read in this lawsuit?
Well, here's what I think is going on, Brian, and let's just break it down for everybody. NASCAR, in pulling what they pulled with this last minute charter negotiation, ticked off the most competitive athlete in history in Michael Jordan. And if you look at Jordan's career right now, he is retired as an athlete. He has a lot of money that he's more than willing to spend, which is something new for NASCAR. Typically, when they bully people around, they bully people that don't really have the money to come back against them. Or if they're accused of bullying someone, it's somebody that really can't take them to court per se and fight at the same level. Jordan can do that. Jordan's not even the majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets anymore. He doesn't have that NBA interest that he had before, and he's spending more and more time with his NASCAR operation. And with this negotiation and the way that NASCAR handled it, 2311 very, very strongly believes that they were not given a fair shake, and they gave NASCAR multiple opportunities to come back to the table, and NASCAR basically dared them. And when you dare the most competitive athlete in history that at 50 years old still thought he could go toe-to-toe with LeBron James, there's a very famous Sports Illustrated article about when Jordan turned 50 that I encourage everybody to Google and look up. This guy at 50 thought he could still be a starter in the NBA going toe-to-toe with LeBron. And so you take somebody off like that, and you take somebody off that has the money to come back at the sport, along with one of the veteran leaders in Denny Hamlin that has become a voice for the drivers. These guys were not going to stand down, and they feel like they have nothing to lose, right? Like, this is Hamlin's livelihood. After he finishes driving, he's going to be a co-owner of this team, hopefully win races and championships for a very long time. This looks to be Jordan's primary hobby for the short term as he figures out what he's going to do next in basketball, if anything. So I think we're at an inflection point for both Hamlin and Jordan within racing, and they're not making any money. One of the most surprising things, Nolan, that I learned is Bob Jenkins. It wasn't that surprising, dealing with Front Row Motorsports for years, and Jerry Freeze and everybody associated with them. Great people, from a journalistic perspective, one of the more open race teams to begin with, but they haven't turned a profit since Jenkins has come onto the circuit in 2005. So think about that. That organization hasn't turned a profit. And we look at these stick and ball sports, the Miami Marlins, who this year they were one of the worst teams in baseball. They sold for $2.2 billion not long ago. $2.2 billion. Meanwhile, a race team, an organization that's supposed to be at the level of those stick and ball sports, race team isn't turning a profit, and their charters right now are not worth very much. Furniture Row Racing sold in 2018 for $6 million, their charter, just 1 year after winning the championship. So you have organizations that feel a sense of desperation that they're never going to be competitive under the current system, and feel like NASCAR left them no choice, and that's why we are where we are.
The teams said in the lawsuit, the France family and NASCAR are monopolistic bullies, and bullies will continue to impose their will to hurt others until their targets stand up and refuse to be victims. That moment has now arrived. Now, Michael Jordan obviously also released a statement. He said that everyone knows that I have always been a fierce competitor, and that will to win is what drives me and the entire 2311 team each and every week on the track. I love the sport of racing and the passion of our fans, but the way NASCAR is run today, it is unfair to teams, drivers, sponsors, and fans. Today's action shows I'm willing to fight for a competitive market where everyone wins. With that being said, Tom, where do we go from here? Obviously, Jeffrey Kessler said that he's going to ask for a preliminary injunction that will enable the two teams to compete in 2025 under the new charter agreement while the litigation proceeds. So we're not going to have anybody not be on the racetrack when it comes the Daytona 500 next February. But where do you see this going?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is NASCAR gets an opportunity to respond. And I think we will see them respond in some form this weekend at Talladega. We're not sure yet exactly who and how that will take shape. And then in the courtroom, you do have this preliminary injunction. And what they're trying to do is say, hey, look, we know this case is going to play out for a while. If it makes it to court, I don't think it will make it to court, but we'll talk about all the different options. If it goes for a while, it's going to go past the Daytona 500 next year, and they want their guaranteed spot in the field the same way the other 30 teams have, because they feel like all 36 cars signed this charter agreement under duress, and that's their argument. And they're stepping up and saying that this isn't right. So while they argue that, they should have the same protections as everybody else. We'll see if the court grants them that. Even if the court does not grant them that, it's hard to see 2311, if for some reason this is still going on in February, not being in the Daytona 500 or not having a spot in the field going forward unless NASCAR drastically changed the rules in a way to push them out of the starting field, right? Because you always have multiple spots for unchartered teams. And I don't think we've made it to 40 cars more than a handful of races this season. I don't know how many DNQs we've had, maybe one race other than the Daytona 500. We've had DNQs. Hasn't been much. So we don't have enough teams even showing up that would knock these cars out of the field. So they'll be in the field regardless. And I think whenever you go into any litigation, you have to make a short-term investment financially to keep your team afloat while you argue things out. And, they're with a top-tier legal team. You talked about it. The Kesslers have done all of these legal cases in the Kessler law firm, equal pay for women in soccer, the NCAA lawsuit, even representing, a disabled runner that was trying to compete in the Tokyo Olympics. They are well-versed in what it takes to tackle an organization like NASCAR, and 2311 wouldn't have done this if they weren't in it for the long haul. So I think the next step is just figuring that out. And, I don't believe any other race teams will hop on this lawsuit, but let me tell you, the buzz today, it might have been the teardown where there was another organization that came out and whispered in Bianchi's ear, hey, I wish I could be on that lawsuit with them. I'm happy they did it, but I have to keep my mouth shut because we already signed a charter agreement. There's kind of a buzz in the garage that, there has been this long time feeling that NASCAR holds all the cards when they shouldn't hold all the cards anymore. In the 1990s, they could hold all the cards for a variety of different reasons. You had 60 teams showing up to the racetrack in some cases each week. And the way the organization worked, you could almost come off the street with a race car and then jump into a cup race, especially at a track like North Wilkesboro, Martinsville. It's not the case anymore. This is a multi-million-dollar industry, and there aren't a lot of people on the outside looking in that can jump in and take the place of a 2311, especially when the sports showing is not profitable. So the race teams feel like they have a lot of leverage. And the buzz today is that some of those other race teams are happy that 2311 used it, although they're not going to go on the record and say it.
It's interesting to me that this is not Michael Jordan's first rodeo. He played for the Bulls during the 98-99 NBA lockout. So, he's not opposed to battling it out. Tom, last thing on this. Where do you see this ending up? If they do go to the courts, the discovery phase is going to be ginormous because we're going to figure out everything. We're going to figure out all the nuts and bolts of how much NASCAR gets in terms of revenue, in terms of how much they pay their employees. And that could be a whole new can of worms. Do you see that going that route all the way to the court system? Where does this end?
Well, anybody that's involved in any type of civil litigation knows that it takes a really, really long time for this stuff to play out, right? We're not talking days or months. We're talking years. So it's not going to be an instant. NASCAR has to open all of their books and, oh my goodness, the slingshot hit Goliath and then it's all over. NASCAR just needs to break glass and just show everybody everything or they're going to get arrested. There's nothing like that. It's going to be a long-term process. And the more you go down this road, the more there's an opportunity for NASCAR to settle out of court. And there are reasons for 2311 to settle out of court. They revealed that they purchased a third charter throughout this legal proceeding. So they have an expansion pending. They want to be a part of this sport for the long term. They don't want to drag the sport down. So it's in their best interest to settle out of court, back to the table, and to bring a more fair agreement back to the teams that they feel like is more profitable and better for them. But at the same time, Jordan was an owner during the last NBA lockout. He understands that, hey, this could be a long process. And again, this is where NASCAR needs to be careful from their perspective. This is somebody with money that's competitive, that's willing to dig in their heels, that feels like they've been wronged, and that also has very little to lose. And when you have very little to lose in these types of civil cases, you're willing to go really, really far, and you're not going to settle for less than what you feel like you deserve on your terms. So I think this could get really interesting. And, I think the key moments are really December, January. I don't really think they're going to be now. I don't see this getting settled in season. We have teams fighting for a championship. Tyler Reddick is still, in the round of 12, could very easily win the title this year under the right circumstances. He was the regular season champion. So I think we're going to see a focus back on competition after NASCAR responds. And then we'll see if there is some sort of out-of-court settlement or if they go back to the table in December, January. If they don't, then it gets a little bit interesting. And I'm also curious as to whether Jim France will come out of the shadows in the next month or two. He's not somebody that talks to the media that much. But now you have this giant lawsuit that's accusing you of all these different things. It feels like NASCAR, if they are getting punched at, the leader can't really stand back in the shadows, right? I feel like a no comment really hurts them. So it'll be interesting to see how their leadership team chooses to tackle this, as we go forward.
It is interesting to see where NASCAR will go. Once again, stay tuned for all the latest on Frontstretch.com. I do want to shout out a guy, Tom Blackburn, had a great article about NASCAR faces in adversary it cannot control the courtroom. Once again, check out Tom's column on Frontstretch.com. Big thanks to Tom for writing that article. Let's dive on into our soundbite of the week, where we hear from Josh Berry and another controversy surrounding this NASCAR Next Generation car.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Josh Berry is out before the first lap. I heard the radio. All you guys needed was 4 tires. So what were they telling you? When you were stuck.
Yeah, I mean, that was an experience like none other. I don't know. Obviously, we got clipped and spun, and we had 4 flat tires. I assumed that they were going to tow the car to the pits, which is what I was asking for. And then they dropped my window net, told me to get out. Rodney's telling me to stay in because all we need is tires, and they're telling me to get out. So then they towed me into the campground. So I was down there chilling with the fans, and at that point, then they said they had to get a rollback. So then they finally made me get out. Rodney was trying to talk to somebody and couldn't get anybody on the phone. So honestly, I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing. I mean, I've seen plenty of cars get towed to the pits and put tires on it. I don't know if I'm missing something or if there was something different than normal. But man, that was an experience. That's the best way to put it.
That was gonna say. They've done it in the past. Did they say anything different to indicate otherwise, why they wouldn't do it?
They said the tire was off the wheel, which it's flat, of course, so it's going to be off the wheel. And then I don't know. They just, like I said, they just refused to tow the car. They tried hooking it up on both ends, which, I knew wasn't going to work, so I don't know why they just didn't hook it up and just, hook it up with the rear and just tow it to the pit box and let us put tires on it. I don't know what I'm missing here. But, man, that was sure disappointing.
Tom, why are we still talking about this like 2 years after this new car? I feel like we should have already had something that will fix this, that being when it gets a flat tire, because the car, Josh Berry said it, the car is fine. Why are we still having this problem?
Yeah, I feel like we haven't heard about this in a while. I feel like it came to a head. Joey Logano, Pocono, remember that? Going nuts at the tow driver. And NASCAR, made some changes around this rule, after that. And it seemed like they were a lot more accommodating to race teams to get the car to pit road, to make sure that it was towed, to make sure that there was an opportunity to fix, the tires on the car, understanding that with the next gen, getting the tow is a little bit different than the previous generation of car. With that said, I also think that it might have been a different answer and a different result, I don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but, Barry's not a playoff driver, right? He's not a guy that's currently going for the championship. And, as this unraveled, I think that, there were certain things that maybe would have been corrected in race if it was a driver going for the championship. And it was one of those like poor lady luck, Barry got the short end of the stick type things. I think NASCAR has been better with this for the most part because we haven't really heard about this much this year, in my opinion. And it was just kind of a freak of nature, the way that accident happened, the way Barry's car was. And, I think NASCAR will learn from that experience. And NASCAR does learn from these things. I think people are really heavy-handed sometimes on NASCAR officiating. But, I feel pretty confident that we won't see that again. And I feel very confident that we won't see it with the driver that.
Yeah, if this happens with a playoff driver, oh boy, it's not going to be a good look for NASCAR whatsoever. Let's dive on in some final thoughts and wrap it up.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts are in the air. Whatever you want to rant, rave, or anything in between. The boss man, Tom Bowles, the floor is yours, my friend.
So a couple of different things. Number one, I just want to reemphasize, we're doing a lot in the wake of Hurricane Helene to try and help out. We feel awful for everyone in Western North Carolina. We've had some of our own affected by this, and Operation Airdrop is doing a tremendous job. If you want to help them out, you're local to North Carolina, you can drop stuff off. They have drop-off locations. Please go to our website at frontstretch.com and click on the Operation Airdrop logo. It's very prominent, on the main page or underneath any of the columns, to donate and to help out everyone in the wake of Helene. And, this was very close to the heart of NASCAR country. And, I feel like a lot of the fan base was either directly affected or knows somebody affected. And, we're all hurting, but we're all going to get through it. I can't remember a storm where, I'm unique in that I'm not based in Charlotte. I'm based in the Northeast, and you're also based outside of Charlotte. We know a lot of people that were affected, and it's just been one of those storms that have touched everybody. So, I wanted to come out and say that. I think what's really interesting is the playoffs have taken shape here in the round of 12. The more things change, the more they stay the same. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the points right now, heading to Talladega. And I know Kyle Larson had his problems again, right? They suffered through it. They ended up finishing 26th, although I give them a lot of credit. Cliff Daniels and Kyle worked on that car. 10 more points that they could have had, and Kyle remains in the top 4. The 4 drivers leading the points right now are the 4 drivers that made the championship 4 last year. William Byron, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, and Larson. We have never seen the exact 4 drivers repeat and make the championship 4 again. Look, we still have another round to go. We still have Talladega to go. Who knows who's going to be involved in the big one and how the standings are going to change. But it is interesting that the cream has risen to the top here. And who is just on the outside looking in the midst of this lawsuit, in the midst of all these distractions, just like he was just on the outside looking in last year? Denny Hamlin. So the more things change, the more we go through all these roller coaster iterations of Reddick wins the regular season title, and then you have some surprise winners down the stretch. Harrison Burton comes out of nowhere. We're getting to the nitty gritty, and the same drivers that were in contention last year are in contention this year. Has there really been a change at the top? I don't know, Nolan. Maybe not.
For me, I'm going to be looking at Denny Hamlin. Last week after the race, Denny Hamlin said he was not in it mentally. Now, with this coming out, with all the lawsuits, obviously it is behind the scenes. But, I mean, this is 23-11. This is his team. Now, sure, Denny is plus 11 above the cut line. But he's heading to a track where you can get in a wreck just like that. Sometimes not even his doing. When it's all said and done after Sunday, that plus 11 could be minus 11 in just a split second. For Denny Hamlin, where is his head after this Sunday? Time will tell, but it could be a couple long weeks for that number 11 car. Once again, a big thanks to Parker Kligerman for joining the program. Mr. Tom Bowles, you have a fantastic article on Frontstretch.com with Stat Sheet. You and Mr. Steven Stumpf switched with your columns. So once again, promote all of your work and then promote your Twitter handle, my friend.
Yeah, so Stat Sheet this week takes a closer look at Kyle Busch in the wake of what happened in Kansas. Looks like his record of potentially 20 straight is going to stay at 19 straight seasons with a victory. It's in serious jeopardy of ending. So looked at who else is close to that record, and is that record going to be like Richard Petty's 200 wins? Is that going to be something that's unbreakable, that's going to stand for decades, or are we close to seeing somebody else challenge it? Just how special is that record really, along with the latest trends in the sport? And, Steven switched with me and talked about the NASCAR playoffs and where things stand in DYN. You could certainly see that there. And then, of course, CBS Sports, I always have, in association with Frontstretch, a weekly article over there called NASCAR Crash Course. So take a look at CBS Sports' NASCAR section. You can always find my work there. If you don't find it on Frontstretch, in all the many ways that we impact the sport through our podcast, through our writing, and through our YouTube stuff.
At NASCAR Bulls on the Twitter, at the Bryan Nolen. Coming up on the Frontstretch Podcast Network, Through the Gears, my man Tino's got all the latest betting odds for you for the craziness and unpredictability at Talladega. And then for all the latest on Talladega, myself and Caleb Barnes will be bringing you all the content for all 3 days at the unpredictable Talladega Super Speedway. It's going to be absolutely crazy. Once again, frontstretch.com and then at the Bryan Nolen. For Mr. Tom Bowles, Trey Lyle, who is a fantastic producer, I am Brian Timothy Dale Nolen. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk with you next week.
What's up? Michael Massey here, frontstretch.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.